a woman stood by her kitchen window, watching the mountains as the sun began to dip low in 1959. It was a late afternoon on a remote ranch in New Mexico, where the kitchen served as the beating heart of the home. Back then, these ranches were vast, with some spreading across acreage larger than the entire city of Phoenix, Arizona. Is today. You could smell the pinyon wood smoke from the stove and hear the sizzle of lard in Mother's heavy cast iron skillet. This is a story of quiet evenings, warm family meals, and a way of life that has vanished into the desert dust. Let us step back in time and enter that kitchen once more, where the brightest memories still flicker in the twilight. Morning on the ranch began in the dark, with the rhythmic perking of a heavy aluminum coffee pot on the burner. Father was always the first up, pulling on a worn denim jacket and heading out to check the cattle before dawn. In the kitchen, Mother started kneading biscuit dough and preparing a large skillet of eggs and salty country ham. The scent of golden biscuits mixed with strong black coffee drifted through every small room of the modest ranch house. New Mexico ranch houses often had thick adobe walls that kept the desert heat out and the winter warmth trapped inside. Floors were typically covered in checkered tile or linoleum that Mother kept polished to a high shine every single morning. Do you remember the static-filled radio playing the weather report for the counties across the northeastern high plains? That was how everyone knew if a dust storm was rolling in or if a scorching sun awaited them. After breakfast, the children scrambled to gather their books to catch the only school bus that serviced the area. The dusty yellow bus would travel dozens of miles across unpaved roads to reach the small consolidated district school. Just imagine this. In 1959, there were thousands of small, family-owned cattle ranches operating across the state. The number of cattle in New Mexico then was greater than the entire human population of Chicago and Detroit. Once the kids were at school and Father was out, the kitchen fell into a strange, deep silence. Mother would use this time to begin preparing for supper, which was her most important task of the day. Pinto beans were soaked in a large ceramic crock, a staple dish that was never missing from a New Mexican table. Do you remember the feeling of resting your arms on the cool Formica tabletop during a sweltering summer noon? That was where Mother sat to write her grocery list for the long trip into town every weekend. Ranch work in the middle of the day was brutal and dusty under the relentless New Mexico sun. Father and the hired hands usually returned to the kitchen for a quick lunch of thick meat sandwiches. They drank large jars of iced tea, sweetened with plenty of sugar to cool down and regain their strength. One small detail you might have forgotten is the steady hum of the large electric fan on the windowsill. It could not cool the whole room, but its rhythmic sound became a permanent part of every ranch summer. The nearest town was often an hour's drive away, featuring a main street that felt like the center of the world. There was Mr. Miller's General Store, where the smell of roasted coffee beans mingled with the scent of new leather. Do you remember the feeling of Father giving you a nickel to buy a cold Coca-Cola from the ice chest? The cold glass bottle in your hand and the fizzy carbonation were the best rewards after that long, dusty drive. Consider this. In 1959, the price of a gallon of gasoline was only about 25 cents. With just $1, you could buy enough gas to drive from Albuquerque all the way to the Texas border. But on the ranch, life was not measured in dollars, but by what you could harvest from the dry earth. Mother kept a small garden behind the house, where she grew the famous, spicy New Mexico green chilies. By late summer, the smell of roasting chilies would fill the air, a scent that no one ever truly forgets. Do you remember the rhythmic click of the Singer sewing machine Mother used during those quiet afternoons? She made clothes for the whole family, from plaidwork shirts to the flowered aprons she wore every day. That sewing machine was more than a tool. It was a testament to the industry of a ranch woman. As evening approached, the shadows of the Hoya cactus stretched long across the parched, cracked earth. This was when the kitchen became its busiest, Preparing for the return of the weary men from the range, Mother would turn on the radio once more to listen to the soft country ballads of the late 50s. The melodies of Hank Williams or Patsy Cline echoed like a welcome for a day nearly done. Supper on the ranch often featured beef stew with potatoes or stacks of fresh, handmade flour tortillas. Mother always made tortillas hot and soft, better than any store-bought kind you could find today. Do you remember the rich aroma of beef, slow simmering in the pot throughout the entire afternoon? For millions of Americans raised in the West back then, that scent was the very definition of home. When the sun finally set, the New Mexico sky turned deep purple with billions of stars twinkling above. In a place this remote, there were no city lights to dim the breathtaking beauty of the universe. Father returned home, washing the desert dust from his hands at the white porcelain sink. Before sitting down, the whole family gathered around the kitchen table where all the stories of the day were finally shared. There was a magical bond in those simple suppers, something that feels so hard to find in the modern world. Imagine this. In 1959, nearly every ranch family was almost entirely self-sufficient for their food. They bought only the basics, while everything else came directly from their own gardens and livestock. Do you remember the ring of the wall-mounted telephone with its distinct patterns of long and short rings? That was the party line, where you had to wait for neighbors to finish their talk before you could call. Everyone in the area knew each other through the shared sounds and rhythms of their daily lives. After supper, Mother and the children cleaned up together, dishes washed by hand and dried with cloth towels. This was the time to teach the children about responsibility and the value of everything they possessed. Father usually sat at the large wooden table, reading a week-old newspaper or checking the ranch ledgers. Every number in that ledger represented the sweat and hard work of an entire year on the range. Life in New Mexico in 1959 was not easy, but it was filled with a quiet, rugged resilience. Do you remember the feeling of lying in a bed with cotton sheets that smelled of the afternoon sun? As the darkness became total, distant barking dogs signaled the beginning of another quiet desert night. These ranch houses looked like tiny oases in the middle of a vast and lonely sea of sand. There are things from that time that have vanished forever, like the old icebox Mother used for storage before the era of modern refrigerators. Keeping food fresh was a daily challenge and a practiced art. Or the sound of wagon wheels on dirt, a sound that today only exists in the movies of the past. Even as machinery arrived, horses remained the indispensable companions of every true New Mexico cattleman. Do you remember Sunday evenings when the whole family gathered to listen to radio dramas together? That was when your imagination took flight, soaring far beyond the majestic Sangre de Cristo Mountains. Consider this. In 1959, New Mexico was one of the most sparsely populated states in the entire Union. The number of people per square mile was lower than the population of a single New York City block. That isolation forged a community where neighbors truly looked after one another like their own family members. If your truck broke down on a lonely road, the first person to pass would certainly stop to help. New Mexico evenings always brought a touch of mountain chill rolling down onto the high desert plains. Mother would add a few more sticks of wood to the stove to chase away the chill and keep the kitchen warm. Do you remember the sound of the wind whistling through window cracks and dry branches tapping against the walls? It was the sound of the wilderness, reminding people they lived at the mercy of the great southwestern sky. In the kitchen, the ceramic water jugs were always lined up neatly on the weathered wooden shelves. Every item had its own story, passed down through generations of families living on the rugged ranchland. There were evenings when Father would pull out his old acoustic guitar and strum a few simple, earthy tunes. The music blended with the sound of the fire, creating a space of extraordinary and deep peace. Do you remember falling asleep in your chair while listening to Father's stories of the long cattle drives? Those stories nurtured the souls and the dreams of countless children growing up on the high desert frontier. As the evening drifted into late night, Mother prepared the kerosene lamps. Just in case the power flickered, the soft yellow light from the lamp created dancing shadows on the thick, plastered adobe kitchen walls. That was when everything became most silent, leaving only the steady, rhythmic breathing of the house. Every crack in the wall and every scratch on the table was a permanent part of your family's memory. Do you remember the sound of Mother's light footsteps on the boards as she tucked you in one last time? It was a quiet protection that we only truly understood and appreciated once we reached adulthood. Imagine this. In 1959, the crime rate in these remote ranching counties was almost non-existent. People could leave their doors unlocked all night without fear, because the whole land felt like one big family. Today, many of those old ranch kitchens have become either crumbling ruins or silent museum exhibits. But if you close your eyes, you can still hear the laughter and smell the cooking from all those years ago. What remains are the vivid, living memories that we still carry deep within our hearts today. New Mexico in 1959 was a different world, where time seemed to move at a much slower pace. There was no rush of modern life, only the steady, ancient rhythm of nature and the family bond. Do you remember the feeling of belonging to a place where everyone knew your name and your history? It is a priceless heritage that our generation was fortunate enough to experience and to hold dear. Those evenings in that ranch kitchen molded the people we have become in this modern world. A generation grown from the dust, the sun, the wind, and the enduring warmth of family love. No matter how much the world changes, those old values remain as solid as the desert rock. We can still find traces of that time in the few remaining adobe houses scattered across the plains, or in the heavy cast iron skillets we still use to fry eggs every single Sunday morning. These are the invisible threads connecting a brilliant past with our fast-moving, uncertain present. The people who truly remember New Mexico in 1959 are becoming fewer with each year, but your memory is a treasure. So tell your stories to your children and grandchildren often, so that the ranch kitchen never truly grows cold and the smell of roasting chilies lingers on. Why are these small, seemingly insignificant memories so vital to the story of who we are? Because they are the foundation of our peace, the place we return to whenever we grow weary. The smell of pinyon smoke, the click of the singer, and Mother's gentle gaze by the fire. Those things may not exist on most modern, high-tech ranches in the world we live in today, but if you close your eyes long enough, you can still hear that wind and feel that warmth.